The Laguna Art Museum is exhibiting works by one artist whose creations had an impact on the surf, rock, and the born-again Christian movements. Laguna Art Museum curator Susan Anderson and guest curator Greg Escalante join us to talk about the exhibit, Heart and Touch. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Where is your museum located for those that don't know?
It's in Laguna Beach at 307 Cliff Drive, right above the ocean.
Greg, what is this exhibit?
It's an exhibit of Rick Griffin, and he had a profound influence on the youth culture in Southern California especially, and then ultimately around the world, really.
Now, he seems, how did he wind up getting so involved with the surf community with his artwork?
John Severson, the founder of Surfer Magazine, that was the Bible of surfing at the time, hired him right while he was in high school at age 16 or even younger, and he started doing comics, and he developed a character that sort of captured everyone's imagination and really sort of swept the surfing world. This character was named Murphy.
Susan, when you look at something, is this a little bit different from the usual art you have?
Actually, no. Laguna Art Museum has sort of pioneered exhibitions that look at pop culture because it's a museum of California art, and it's very important to the history of art in California.
Now, we have some video. Take a look at it, and I'm not even sure what it is. We're going to look at it right now and see. What do we have here? That looks like Rick at work.
Looks like we're painting a bus.
It's Rick Griffin painting a bus called Motor Skill in a movie by John Severson called Pacific Vibrations, which was made in 71.
And this was actually before the Brady Bunch got the idea.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You mean Partridge Family?
Yeah.
The Partridge Family bus?
That was the Partridge, thank you.
It's all becomes one, doesn't it?
It's interesting when you think about him. I know that I read what Corky Carroll had written about him in the Register, and very fascinating. He died at an early age. But how did he get so involved in not just surfing, but also in album covers and then in the religious community?
Well, he was super interested in the visual element of art, which maybe wasn't that popular in museums at the time or in art school. And so he noticed that something was happening in San Francisco, not just with the psychedelic music that was taking place, but also the posters and the visual. And so as he kind of defined what surfing art was, he wound up going up to San Francisco and almost defining what the psychedelic art was.
Susan, how do you wind up finding exhibits like this? Because this one seems rather unusual, but it seems fascinating.
Well, an exhibition like this was really something that grew out of research into what's important about the history of art in California, and also what has really contributed to art today. Because much of art today in California draws from graffiti, surfing, a lot of the subcultures. And Rick Griffin was somebody that really was at the forefront of several of those subcultures. And so his art sort of creates almost a paradigm for the art that is now developing today. So it's an important...
You brought a book that I believe this is also available at the museum.
Yes.
With a lot of his work in it. He was obviously a very prolific artist in all three topics.
Yes.
How much of his work still survives, and how much of it is actually on display at your museum?
There are 140 works of art, and then there are numerous, maybe another 150 more ephemeral things that he designed. And there's still quite a bit of his work around, but a lot of it is fragile. It's just pieces of paper or things that were published. A lot of his art really was commercial production art.
Oh, okay.
But he always subverted the message as a true countercultural artist would.
Can you still find original works of art of his around to buy, or is that really something that you just don't find much?
You can. Actually, it's easier to find his rock posters.
Yeah,
those you still can
yeah.
find. If you go on the internet, for example, you can still buy those.
Greg, what do you think of his art?
Well, I guess when I started from a kind of a child surfing, it sort of captured all my interests and all of that. And then I first noticed Rick Griffin because more than the photographers or the writers trying to describe surfing, his illustrations really captured surfing even better. So I couldn't, hang the surfing experience on the wall. The next best thing was to get a Rick Griffin original, put that on my wall.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating.
It's
and how long does the exhibit run?
It runs through September 30th.
Don't miss it, gang. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
us.
Thank you. LagunaArtMuseum.org is where you can find out all about it. We're going to be right back with a preview of tomorrow's Real Orange broadcast after this quick break. Stick around.
And when I check the website, here's a really fascinating lecture series that's going on as a part of this as well.
Very good. It ought to be great. Okay, tomorrow on Real Orange, we have some advice for people struggling to make their monthly mortgage payments.
And San Clemente gets ready to make some big waves over plans for this year's Ocean Festival.
That does it for this edition of Real Orange. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you tomorrow night at 6:30 and 11, and watch for our weekday morning rebroadcast at 8 a.m.
Good night.
This edition of Real Orange has been made possible.